Hey everyone, this is our third and final video to talk about equations of circles. So things that we already know before are equation of a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. The center is hk, the radius is r. So we've talked about being given those things and what we do with it. We've talked about what happens if we're given the center and a point on the circle. The new thing we're going to talk about today is what happens if we are given the endpoints of the diameter. If you remember, the diameter goes through the center and has endpoints on the circle. So in order to find the equation of a circle, we need to find the center first of all. If the diameter goes through the center, then the center is going to be directly in the middle of the diameter, or the center is going to be the midpoint of the diameter. That means we need to use the midpoint formula, which if you remember is x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Another way of thinking about it is finding the midpoint is just finding the average between the x-coordinates and the average between the y-coordinates. After we find the center, this has to happen first. You cannot find the radius without finding the midpoint first, or finding the center first. After you find the center, you can find the radius because it connects the center and a point on the circle. This means we're using the distance formula again. So the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. This is the thing that you do second. What you have to be careful of with this one is to make sure you are using the center and either point you're given. So it doesn't matter which endpoint of the diameter you use, you just pick one of them. So find the equation of the circle with the diameter endpoints at 0, 0 and 4, 2. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find the center. And I'm going to split this up into 2 columns because I'll go through and I'll find the radius after. But to find the center, I'm going to start with the points 0, 0 and 4, 2. Like we've always done and like we continue to do, we're going to label x1, y1, x2, y2, and we're just going to plug it in to our midpoint formula. So x1 plus x2 over 2, that's 0, plus 4 over 2, comma 0 plus 2 over 2. This is 4 divided by 2, comma 2 divided by 2, or this is 2, 1. What you have just found here is your center, HK. Now to find the radius, you have to use the center point. You have to use the point that we just found. After that, it is totally up to you whether you want to use 0, 0 or whether you want to use 4, 2. I'm going to use 4, 2 because I don't want to work with negative numbers. So x1, y1, x2, y2. And we plug it into the distance formula. So distance equals, or this time our radius equals, 4 minus 2 squared plus 2 minus 1 squared. 4 minus 2 is going to give us 2. 2 minus 1 is going to give us 1. When I square 2, I get 4. When I square 1, I get 1. So the radius is equal to the square root of 5. Remember, that's the second thing we need to know. Here's the other thing that I would get in the habit of doing. I would go through and I would actually graph these and see if it makes sense. So what I found is diameter endpoints are at 0, 0, and 4, 2. When I plot my center that I found, 2, 1, it should look like it's directly in the middle of those, which it does. You can kind of draw in the rest of your circle. The other thing that you'll be able to notice is if you actually count, or if you were to plug in the square root of 5, it's going to give you a little bit over 2. Obviously, we've talked about you're not able to count these, but you can kind of tell this distance right here is going to be just a little bit more than 2, like 2.23, something like that, which makes sense. So from here, I want to actually make sure I go through and write my equation. So I have my HK labeled and I have my R labeled. That's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Or x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 5. Alright, for the next one, I'm going to start the exact same way. I need to find the center and then the radius. So the points we're given are 2, 6, and 6, negative 6. Labeling like we did before, x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to plug it into my midpoint formula. 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and 6 plus negative 6 divided by 2. That's going to give us 8 over 2, comma 0 over 2, or 4, 0. Remember, the midpoint that we just found here, this is my center, HK. So H is 4 and K is 0. From here, I want to find my radius by doing the distance formula. The one point that I have to have is 4, 0. From there, you can choose whether you want to do 2, 6 or 6, negative 6. Just to make it different from the last one, I'm going to use the first point, so 2, 6. Starting the same way, labeling x1, y1, x2, y2. My radius equals 2 minus 4 squared plus 6 minus 0 squared. That's going to give us negative 2 squared plus 6 squared or 4 plus 36, which is the square root of 40. Remember, you don't want to actually plug that into your calculator because we are just simply looking for the equation here. I am going to graph it and make sure it makes sense. So 2, 6, and 6, negative 6. For the endpoints of my diameter with my center at 4, 0. If you plot the points, it definitely looks like it is in the middle there. And if you were to go through and actually connect those, the square root of 40, that's going to be slightly over 6, probably about 6.4, which makes sense when you look at the graph. So now I can write my final equation, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, or x minus 4 squared plus y squared equals 40.